Hi, I'm Rachel Alday, and this is the Hospitality Breakroom, recorded weekly in our actual break room at the Abode Luxury Rentals offices in Park City, Utah. This season on the podcast, the founder and CEO of In Haven, Ashley Ching, and her teammate Meaghan Meyers will be joining me for the 10 full episodes.
Our theme this season is certainty, served weekly with In Haven. This is your inside look at how local property managers are setting new standards in vacation rentals. Each week, we unpack the real challenges behind the bed, bath, kitchen, and beyond, offering practical solutions, myth-busting truths, and tips from the field.
Whether you're a seasoned property manager, vendor, owner, or just curious about getting into the vacation rental space, this series shares the real-life tools and stories that bring more consistency to every stay. Powered by Abode Luxury Rentals in In Haven, built for those who want to do things better.
Hi, and welcome back to the Hospitality Breakroom. We are in our third episode of our third season, which is themed Certainty Served Weekly with In Haven. And on that note, we have Ashley Ching and Meaghan Meyers. Every one of the episodes, they'll be joining me for all 10 episodes. And we're going to be talking about all things in standardization and maximizing in what you do in your bedrooms, bathrooms, and kitchen in the vacation rentals that you take care of. So today, we're talking about a really exciting topic that everyone has been asking for, which is the linen programs. So we have a lot to cover. I think it's going to be really exciting. We're going to start off with, we have a title that we wanted to bring up here. And this is going to be Meaghan's episode to star in. I mean, one of the first, probably she'll star in a lot of them. But this one is Your Linen Program is a Profit Center if you let it be. And this is definitely a topic that I need to learn a lot from Meaghan on, because over the years at Abode Luxury Rentals, we have not always had our linen program be a profit center, or really, I don't know that we ever have had it be a profit center. And we have been doing a lot better because of our work with In Haven. And, but I feel like Meaghan has so much information to share in terms of how you can have your linen program not be a net loss to your business, and how I know how to make it like more supportive to what you're trying to execute in terms of standardization and excellent experience in the bedroom and bathroom. But when it comes to profit, Meaghan is the guru. So what do we want to start with, ladies?
Let's start with, what to include in your linen program. I think that's the first question. That's sort of how we kick off all of our discussions with our clients is, okay, so you're thinking about a linen program. This could be a revenue generator for you. You want to create consistency across all of your properties so that when one guest comes from one home and they go and stay at another home, they have a similar sleep and bathing experience. What do you include? And so one of the things that we talk about first is just, let's look at the bed, bath, and kitchen separately. So in the bedroom, what's really important? How do you create that consistent sleep experience? And Meaghan and I were just at dinner the other night with a company that we work with that's the largest manufacturer of pillows. And they provide pillows. They're the Westin Heavenly pillow provider. And they were talking about, how the hotels implement these linen programs. And they talk about how hotels mandate certain SKUs, and then they allow the property manager of that hotel to pick other SKUs that are not necessarily mandated to the spec.
Oh.
So for example, pillows are mandated, meaning that they have to buy from this manufacturer. They have to buy to spec. They cannot go anywhere else. They need to buy to that because Westin wants to create the heavenly bed and they want that consistent experience. Versus mattress pads and mattress encasements, they recommend who to supply from, but the property managers can choose who to buy from. So it was interesting to see like what part of their linen programs, especially, Westin's heavenly bed, what's mandated. So it's the pillows, it's the comforter, it's the linen, the sheets, the towels, versus what's, recommended. And so we talk about, the bedroom, what's included for the bed, the bath with all the towels, the bath mats, and then the kitchen towels. So I guess if you want to talk, Rachel, just quickly before we turn it over to Meaghan, what have you found to be important to be included in your linen program?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we started for sure that, the pillowcases, the sheeting, and then we, sort of moved into pushing people to also allow us to include, and I mean homeowners, to allow us to include the duvet insert and the duvet cover. And then another big one for us was the pillows that go into the pillowcases, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And so for our linen program, it's the towels, so all the terry cloths, and then all the sheeting, and then the duvet insert and the duvet cover. and then the pillows. And then we have also worked on, the pillow protectors and the mattress protectors and covers as well.
hmm And can you talk a little, because you had a big pillow initiative over the last year at Abode. Can you talk a little bit about that
I
program?
mean, I feel like you should talk about this because I don't know how much info I have, but I do know what I know. Because honestly, like, since In Haven, Ashley and your team, since you guys have gotten involved and really, since Abode started working with In Haven and, like, partnering and, having the assistance from what you guys do into guiding our linen program and how we execute, it's like, it's number 1, made it so much more successful, but number 2, it's taken it off my plate where, like, I don't have to be diving into this all the time. The In Haven team is working with people on my team to get this executed, which is like, it's a godsend. But in terms of pillows, I know where this started, which is we started finding when we would go into houses, like my team in the off season, which is basically right now starting where we are in our 3 markets, Park City, Jackson Hole, and Sun Valley. What we do in the more off season is we have people from all over the whole team, not just the inspectors, but other people on the team that are more like office people. We rotate them to go do inspections in houses so that they can start to see what's actually in the houses. And that always is like opening up people's eyes. And we usually find things we need to work on that way because sometimes the inspectors and the housekeepers that are in the houses all the time, they can get blind to details. And so through that process, at one point, people on my team were noticing like, hey, some of these pillows underneath the pillowcase were like gross and yellow, or some of them are super hard, other ones are super soft, and it's just not consistent. And so through that process, we really wanted to figure out how can we have consistency with the pillows that we have in the houses. And it was In Haven and a plan with In Haven. And then someone on my team named Julie, who's our property enhancement specialist, that she worked on that with In Haven. I don't know. I feel like, Ashley, do you want to talk about what you guys worked on with Julie to get that program going?
Yeah, so she basically inspected all the houses, all the pillows, and just to find where they needed complete replacements. And she worked with the owners on this program, and I think everyone's been very happy with the results. And I wanted to ask Meaghan, because Meaghan, you stayed in one of the properties, the Abode properties with
What's the best experience?
the pillows. Tell us, what did you think of the sleep experience there and the bathing?
Well, it's funny because there was like I am always the go-to person in my family to find where we're gonna stay, of course, which is a lot of pressure, and there's 17 of us. And so we need to find somewhere that's gonna fit 17 people. And then I have to travel with all 17 people, and then I have to deal with how everybody feels about the house. And so I'm like, we're gonna stay with the boat and everything's gonna be fine and we're gonna be well taken care of, which it's funny because behind the scenes, the Abode team did so much to make sure that we had this like incredible experience, but you never would have known because everything ran very seamlessly. But the thing that I will always remember, 2 things. One is they put fresh flowers in every single room, which was insane.
Yeah,
Like
we
the
don't do that
most
for everyone. We do this for VIPs. Like, we do. We definitely go the extra mile for, like, people that we're feeling special about and or for reservations that are, like, really high dollar. But so I don't want everyone to think we always put fresh flowers in every room. We always have special gifts, and we always, like, leave treats in the fridge and everything. But yeah, no, I mean, I love how that was executed.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh, it was incredible, and the beds were so comfortable. And I think I, like, very much am a proponent for including pillows in a linen program, and it's, one of the major issues that we have in the industry, of course, is, like, there isn't any mandated requirements for a linen program. A linen program, in many ways, is super subjective to any type of vacation rental company because we still have fragmentation in that way. And I could tell, like, when I would wake up in the morning, and this is how you always know, and I always think of this because my family does this. We would all meet up in the kitchen and say, "How'd you sleep last night? How was it after the first night?" And someone will usually say, like, "Oh, well, my pillow was really flat, and I had to switch pillows with my husband in the middle of the night because he had a really thick pillow." And like, that was not our experience at all. And we had 5 couples and a bunch of kids. So I was just like immediately impressed by the fact that it was very evident that all the pillows were the same.
It does make a huge difference to be able to have consistency like that. And I think I'm always the one bringing this topic up, like, every episode we've done so far. But I just remember the fear as, owning a vacation rental company and being the property manager. I had a lot of fear around my ability to go to homeowners and, like, sort of demand that they upgrade stuff like pillows. And I always felt strongly about that, but I just didn't feel confident that I could get them to agree without making them mad. And so for me, that has been, I would say there's so many components of working with Inhaven that have been strong and like lifesavers for us. But this piece about giving me a tool, like a way to communicate, like the product, the great pillows at a good price that I can confidently say I will consistently be able to offer and replace with, that it's not so expensive. This is a good product. If we need to replace later, I'm not starting over trying to resource something. Like we have this good option. And working with Inhaven has given us like this way, a template, sort of a assistance with the proper way to communicate that to the homeowners to get that approval. And so all of that, it seems like small stuff like that maybe we could have done on our own, but I don't think we could have. And so then having those pieces in play allowed us, dedicate someone from our team to that process and actually go ahead and standardize the pillows, which was something that we wanted to do for years and years. It's not like we ignored the pillows before that. It was literally like we would see it and we'd be too scared to make a difference. And now we don't have to be scared. And that's just like, I don't know. I think if people are listening and they're in the vacation rental industry, and especially if you own a company, you know this feeling. You want to do better for your guests and your homeowners, but you also don't want to have your homeowner fire you or be mad at you about expenditure that you're demanding that they might not see the benefit of. So when you have that way to explain the benefit and the value, it changes the whole game.
Absolutely. I think, so I think as you're thinking of people out there that are thinking about their linen programs or wanting to update their linen programs, I think it's important to say, okay, what are the items that we want to have consistent across all our properties, whether that be pillows, sheets, linens, even down to kitchen towels. So look at each room where you provide linens and what you want to mandate versus what you'll leave it up to your owner to purchase. So in terms of, once we define what that linen program includes, then we start to work with our property managers on par levels. And Meaghan, do you want to talk a bit about par levels and what we typically recommend?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to our conversation a little bit about Terry. When we think of par levels, it's typically between that like 2.25 and 3 number. So when I imagine linens, which I talked about this in last episode, but for anyone who didn't listen, I always think of having one set on the beds that's clean, ready for a guest to arrive, another set that's being laundered, and then this third set, it really just kind of depends. That could either be picked and packed or being picked and packed for the next week's arrivals or the next weekends or the next day's arrivals, or it could be in a closet, like an open closet in each individual bedroom. It really just depends. So when I think of 3 par, it really works when you have homes that might be a little bit more spread out, or if you have a significant amount of properties on your program, I typically recommend like going higher with your par levels. Pillows are a little bit different in terms of par. Like you don't need to have 3 sets of pillows for every single home that you have on your program in every single bedroom, because then you're going to end up spending $1 million. I actually have made that mistake when I was doing a linen calculator and put in that we needed 3 par of pillows, and it was literally $500,000. And I was like, oh, what happened here? So actually, speaking of this, Ashley, can you tell me the lifespan of a hospitality grade pillow?
Yeah. So retail pillows, the pillows that you buy in retail stores or on Amazon, typically last anywhere between 6 months to a year and a half of regular use. Then you'll start to see them flatten out and lose some shape and support. Hospitality pillows last 2 to 5 years. So the construction is just so much better. I mean, Meaghan, we just visited this pillow manufacturer, and we should post a picture in our show notes. But yeah, they just last so much longer. The construction's better. The fill is just better. It really holds up the support year after year.
And if
But
this does not freak anyone out, they are meant to be washed once a quarter, which I did not know. And when I heard
Anyone
it,
knew that.
I was like, huh, that's interesting. But hospitality grade pillows are made to go through about 10 washes, which is once a quarter throughout their lifespan. And that was shocking news. The guy looked at me and said, how often were you washing your pillows at your last property management company? And I was like, that's an offensive question. We don't need to get into it. Um, but it's very interesting because you do not have the attrition with pillows that you do with sheets. And right, like you might have stains, but those typically, if you're using pillow protectors, are not being seeped or are not seeping through to the actual pillow. And so you don't need to keep the 3 or even 2 par of pillows for that reason, whereas sheets are ripped and get makeup on them and other types of stains that are harder to get out. So Rachel, are you shocked about this? Washing once a quarter?
Yeah, well, like, here's the thing, and I think the person that asked you that question, like, what I would have said to them would be, "Are you aware that I've never had commercial pillows in any houses?" So, I've never like, I think that's kind of the disconnect, Megan, like, for people like you and I that have been with vacation rental companies. No, we did not know that you could wash or you should wash them once a quarter, but honestly, we could not have done that. Like,
Yeah.
we've talked about this on a previous episode, but, like, my pillows at the houses that I manage my pillows. The pillows, they're not mine. At the houses that I manage, that I have managed over the years, they were bought from Walmart or from, Bed Bath& and Beyond before it went away. And so we were literally going with a Suburban to Walmart or Bed Bath& and Beyond and, like, filling it. And I did this I have probably done that 30 times in my life, maybe more. I would go when we needed pillows, and I would just go buy basically as many of the maybe not the cheapest, but close to it ones they had and fill my car and then come home. And so, like, I couldn't have washed those. And I'm glad I mean, I didn't know that I could have if they were commercial, but, like, the ones I had, maybe you can wash those, but, like, if you could or if you couldn't, I didn't know. I mean, I was just, doing the best I could with what I had at the time. But I think the key point is, like, if you have the better commercial grade pillows, you can wash them. And now it's like, once you know, now you have to, do better now that we know. And that's how I feel about it. It's like, okay, now I could start to work with my team on, like, how could we try and execute, like, washing the pillows maybe twice a year or something in the houses, and how could we come up with a plan for that?
And it's so marketable too. Like at 360 Blue, we would market that we had the clean linen program. And so a guest knew when they checked in that including our duvet covers, they were checking into a home that has been like completely cleaned. The flat sheet, the fitted sheet, the pillowcases, and the duvet cover. So everything that's going to directly touch your body has been washed before you got there. Whereas and I feel this way even in hotels, and, like, I'm admittedly mostly a hotel gal, and I think that's just because for my husband and I, like, that is better and easier and cheaper for us than a
Just
vacation
wait till
rental.
you have your first kid.
Yeah, we'll see when the baby's here and we need, like, another bedroom, but whenever I am in a hotel, I am always like, "I do not want that duvet cover to touch my body," or if they're triple sheeting, like, I do not want I like, that's what I hate about triple sheeting too, is that it's, like, exposed and there isn't, like, buttons or, like, something, right? Or, like, it's not a folded over I can't even think about it, and I do not like, we at 360 Blue did not want any guest to feel that way, like, "Hey, if it's gonna touch your body, know that it has been washed," and it was great for homeowners too, just to get that buy-in, which I think is really hard, and I think for this, like, pillow conversation as a whole, which can feel really overwhelming, especially if you're enterprise level or you have even, like, 50 properties or more, it can feel stressful to think like, "Okay, how am I gonna replace proper or 50 properties worth of pillows, and they each have an average of 3 bedrooms." So if you have property managers or owner liaisons or whatever you choose to call them that are responsible for being in these homes every day, start a spreadsheet and have them go and literally test each pillow like Julie did at Abode and, like, it just chunk it out piece by piece by piece, or start in, like, one community or just with your 1 bedrooms. And I like, this project does not have to be tackled all at once overnight. And so I think for anyone that's listening that's like, "Oh my god, like, I feel like I'm walking away with so much work," you can, like, start it small
Yeah.
and phase out old pillows as time goes on and, like, start to implement this
I
linen
think
program of pillows.
I think that's kinda what Julie did is, like, she went through and it was her and then she had 1 or 2 people helping her throughout the process, like, off and on, and they just started because when it came up, it was like and this is small business stuff, I think, too, but it's like, you're like, "Well, let's just start somewhere. Let's just take the first step." It's like, print out a list of all the homes and then, like, make some spreadsheet that's giving you a place to fill in info about each bedroom and just go in the houses and just start making notes on what's going on in each house, and then we can start assessing with those homeowners, who should we start with first so that we can have some momentum and some positive response and, then get after it. And then, of course, like, once we had more assistance and, like, support from InHaven in terms of the details on what we were selling and how it was a good value and it was something that we could replace consistently and how we had good pricing available and then just all the things like that helped make us more and more successful and create more momentum. But yeah, I mean, you have to start somewhere. So like go out and get the info.
Exactly. And so Megan, on that, on just the info itself, can you talk about, because I think what's really overwhelming for people out there is like, first of all, the cost. Like, how do you even understand what this is going to cost you? And then how do you charge for it?
I think that is truly the thing that hangs people up on a linen program the most. And it's been really interesting being on the in-haven side and hearing other property managers' perspective that have said, like, hey, I'm to the point where I'm just trying to grow my company. And so the thought when I have 5 properties and I have 5 owners that want to join, going to them and saying, hey, in order to join, you have to do this, this, and this, like freaks me out more than just accepting them and then trying to deal with it later on. And I think I said this in the first episode, but like it is so much better to get owners on board when you sign them up than it is to go back when you already have 50 owners or even 20 owners and say, hey, we're implementing this. So like that is my first thing that I want to mention is, and I think it can be very intimidating when you're trying to grow, but I also think growth to me when running a property management company and picking partners in homeowners is only like they're only worth signing if they are interested in that partnership. And if they're going to put up like a huge fight from the very beginning or are very against this idea that is like where the industry is going as a whole, I can assure you they will not be a good fit long term. And I think that that's really hard when you're trying to get started and margins are really tight already and you're trying to get a foothold. And so it's just like this growth mindset of, hey, it really is a partnership. And the owners that I have felt think of me as like, you work for me are the ones that have never worked out in the first place.
Yeah.
So, in terms of just understanding the cost, how have you tackled this in the past? Like, do you have, something where you have all your beds and baths and you kind of figure out what this is going to cost you? What are some best practices there?
Yeah. So once I figured out, like, hey, this is something that we want to move forward with no matter what, the next step is figuring out what the cost structure looks like, which typically starts with a spreadsheet. And I've always done it on the individual property level. So you get a spreadsheet, you write out all of your units, how many bedrooms they have, how many bathrooms they have, because typically as a linen program, you do include Terry, although we're focused on bedrooms today. And I start to understand like, okay, these are the par levels that I want. I have typically always had 3 par at the companies that I have worked with. And from there, like, okay, this home has X number of bedrooms, X number of bathrooms. This is how many flat sheets we need. And I go piece by piece by piece, like all the way down to the washcloth. So the spreadsheet can get pretty long, but it is very helpful because then you know exactly like, okay, for this one home, exactly. Keeping a 3 par of all linen and all terry is gonna cost us $800. And from there, then you can decide, okay, now I have a choice to make. Do I want to structure this where I eat 100% of the cost? Do I want to split it with owners? And I've typically seen a pro rata split. So, what that looks like is if you have a 20% commission rate and the owner is getting 80%, you can go to the homeowner and say, hey, we will pay 20% of this $800 and you will be responsible for the 80%. We are telling you right now on April 11th, this is going into effect on August 1st, and you will be like deducted on your owner statement. I think giving that notice is incredibly important, especially when it is something that you are not allowing owners to opt into, which I'm very supportive of, by the way. Like, this is your company and your linen program. And so, or you can go 100% owner paid. I think that that's an easier conversation when the owner is first coming on the program, of course. Again, rather than going to a homeowner and say, hey, we're implementing this, we're charging you 100%, it's going to be $2,000. So there are kind of like 3 ways to, I always say this on the call, skin the cat. I don't know if that's acceptable to continue saying.
No, I think it is. Well,
As a vegetarian, and I mean, most vegetarians don't eat cats anyways, but apologies. So those are typically the 3 ways that I have seen it done. And I always like recommend when building into your budget, there should be like a complete housekeeping section. And within this housekeeping section, you have all the income from your cleaning fees. So once you have this like cost breakdown and you know what your linens are going to cost you per individual property, then you can start to figure out like, okay, on every single turn for every year, if we have an average of 26 turns a year, some places when they're smaller, and let's say you're in a not a leisure destination, an urban destination, I was missing the word, and you might have 40 turns in a single year because those stays are a little bit smaller. Like that, of course, is going to up your housekeeping fees because you're doing more cleans. So you need to understand what your average number of turns are. And then you can see, like, okay, here is what I am paying in labor for housekeeping. This is what I'm paying for linen and terry. And then coming up with like an attrition rate, which Ashley, we've said 20 to 30%, or you've said 20 to 30% in the past, which is what I have seen as well. And we've talked about that on previous episodes, that it tends to be a little bit higher attrition in beach markets, unfortunately. The good news is those are leisure destinations, so you have a bit fewer turns because people are staying a little longer. So the cost ultimately evens out. And then you build in your amenity cost. And so it can be like several steps, and I can break this out again. Like, number one, calculate the cost of your linens. Number two, understand what your housekeeping costs are, which is really just labor. Or cleaning supplies as well, if you are covering that cost. Number three, your amenity cost. So if you are stocking soaps, shampoos, which most people are, what does that cost you per turn? And from there, then you can understand, like, okay, it costs me a year $5,000 to maintain this property on the housekeeping end. Then you can decide what housekeeping fees you need to charge to either cover that cost and break even, or what I always recommend is adding on margin to make it a profit center. Because I do think, like, aside from rental income, housekeeping should be the number two profit center in the business. And I think it's been harder to do this, admittedly, over the last couple of years because there has been a lot of comments and discussions around fees. But I also think that at the end of the day, like, we are in a business that has extremely thin margins. Most property management companies have like a 6 to 10% margin, most really falling on like the 6 to 8% range. And so anything you can do to thicken those margins. And the conversation with homeowners is, hey, you want us to take the absolute best care of your home. We have got to employ people in order to do that. And that requires a margin. The best people that we can possibly find who are as bought into taking care of your home as possible. We maintain a property to people ratio of X. Those like high end like abodes, I'm sure you have like a pretty low people to property ratio because it's really important to you to keep and maintain that level of service. And I think once those conversations start to happen with homeowners, they realize, like, okay, yes, you have high standards. You're going to take great care of my home. You staff a lot of people, and you're also a business that needs to make money at the end of the day. Like, that makes sense to me. And if they do not align with what you're trying to achieve, then like they probably aren't a good fit to begin with.
Well, it's
And
true.
if you guys, oh, sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
No, I mean, I'm like, so everything that Megan's saying is just like, it's so important. And it's stuff that took us at Abode. It took Rob and I and our team so many years, which sounds so ridiculous. I know, but it took us so many years to get these concepts through trial and error. And I just think it's so great to be able to kind of explain that to people, Megan, and like lay out options and the facts of how this could be done with profitability included. Because I think a lot of companies and a lot of owners, me included, like when you talk about estimating, trying to figure out how much to charge for your linen program, like we estimated, we didn't have someone on our team who was, great with spreadsheets and figuring out stuff like that. So we came up with an amount, and we went with it for all these years. We're still using it, and we're really not very profitable, if at all, on our linens. And we need to, we've been working with Inhaven to try and fix that. And same with housekeeping. Like Megan, when I hear you saying that, you have a way to be profitable with housekeeping, even let's say when you worked with a company in Jackson Hole, like that's mind blowing to me because the way that we did it was not maybe the right way for profitability. And we have really never found a way to be profitable on housekeeping. And I know that in our markets, like we're in these Mountain West ski markets, hourly costs for cleaning employees are very, very high, like 25 to 35, even sometimes higher per hour for people. And that can make what you're charging for cleaning, you kind of get to a certain point where you can't charge anymore. And so you're not going to make any money. But thinking about it in these ways that Megan is explaining is really how, as a business owner, you can stop estimating and you can stop sort of believing the stories that you've told yourself for so many years. There's a lot of people that are in vacation rentals, whether it's been for, maybe like 5 or 6 years up to 20 years, where you figured it out for yourself and you were doing it in a certain way and you believed it to be correct. But, then when people can come to you and offer you these more well thought out, backed by data options, it's so helpful because, like, I always thought that I couldn't be profitable because of where we operate, that it was just impossible to be profitable on housekeeping or linen programs. And then learning from you guys, you ladies, it's like, oh, maybe I can. Like, I that's maybe just a story that I have told myself, but I wouldn't have known how to break out of that thought process until I, have help from some outside vendor like Inhaven. So
And if you're feeling overwhelmed with the spreadsheet, right? The spreadsheet you need to create, reach out to me and Megan. We have the spreadsheet for you, all formatted,
Yes.
ready for you to enter your numbers and get that total cost. And I think, people that do invest, we work with a lot of property managers that say, you know what, I just need to implement a linen program. And of course, year one, you're going to have higher costs because if you're just starting out, you're going to buy into this whole linen program for all of your properties. But year two, that's when you really start to make money and revenue off of this program because you're charging similar rates, but you're not having to buy into that upfront product line. So it's definitely something that long term can be a great revenue generator.
Mhm.
for property managers.
That's what I call the annual linen assessment. So from there, like in order to keep it profitable when you're replacing the linen, because I think that can be a really big question is like, okay, I've approached my owners, they've bought into it, like we've charged them, we decided to do the pro rata split. Now what happens next year because I still need to make another $50,000 order to replace all that I've lost or, say you make two big purchases a year, you can still keep this spreadsheet and assess owners on their owner statement for the lost linen. And I have seen it done where it depends on the size and the number of turns that a home has. So, an owner that has a 10-bedroom home with 15 beds is going to pay more than an owner that has a studio, for example, and one bed and sleeps two people. And this is just part of the program. Like, hey, twice a year or once a year, we charge you an assessment because we typically see attrition of 20 to 30% of linens. Because this is the number of turns that you have and the size of your property, your assessment fee is going to look like X. And then again, it just goes back on the owner statement. And then, like, if you've decided to also pay for this yourself as a company, and then you want to charge owners ahead of time, like, I say, like, hey, that's totally fine. If that is part of one of the things that you want to do to invest back in your business, I think it's great. And then for new owners coming on, if you have a threshold of a home that you really, really, really want, and you want to waive the cost of a linen fee to begin with, just to get them on the program, like, that is extremely popular to do and worth doing. Like some homes are worth signing because they're going to make so much money that you can just cover those initial startup costs is what they're usually known as. Whereas let's say there's a home that is, hate to say it, but like almost like a dime a dozen on your program, then you would charge them the startup costs. And that could just be built into your budget. Like, hey, these are the amount of startup costs that we are willing to waive for the year. And we have already covered and we expect this expense because we budgeted for it this year.
So smart.
yeah.
And so Megan and Rachel at all of the different companies or at 360 and Outpost and all that, what have you found have been the best tools to market this program to your owners? I know that you talked through some of the strategies with creating a consistent experience and talking through that with the owners. What else kind of works with them?
I think the first step is like, which I am like such a soapbox person about this, but being transparent with your team. Your team is oftentimes the people that you expect to be on the front lines having these conversations with homeowners, and they're the ones getting the questions. And if they don't understand why you're implementing something, they're going to be pissed off at you. And so I think it's just like part of leadership, one of a one-on-one is to sit down with your team and say, "Hey, this is a decision that we have made. Here's why we are making this decision." Like that is the best thing that you can say and providing as much context as possible and then allowing the team to ask questions like, "Hey, why did we decide to do this?" And if an owner asks me this, what should I say back to them? Because they're, like I said, like they're the ones that are having these really difficult conversations. And then also being there to support the team. Like, hey, if an owner is giving you a lot of flack, like I am happy to get on the phone with you and we can talk about this together. And I want to offer you that support. So I think that's like step number one. And step number 2 is like when navigating these conversations with homeowners, I think it's so important to talk about standardization as a whole and why it's important. And like, I have this thing where I think it's really annoying to run a company, and owners tend to do this thinking that their home is a company, like a solo company, right? Where you make decisions based on what you as a person would want, right? Like that's not the way to run a business. And owners are notorious about this of like, well, I like it that
Yes.
my home has these pillows. Okay, well, you're not
Or
the
like,
guest.
I like a queen bed. My husband and I love our queen bed in the master. I
Right, like, you can't run a company based on, like, what you as one person likes and assume that that's what everybody wants, right? Like, "Hey, we're serving thousands of guests, and so the best thing for us to do," and it's like it's, the same thing with building any company, like, you can't take what one person wants and, like, make it the entire company. You have to say, like, "What is best for these 10,000 guests that we serve," right? And that is, like, standardization, that is providing both a medium and a firm pillow or whatever that looks like for you. And I think having those conversations with homeowners, like, I love that you love your blue sheets. We are happy to make sure that those are put on every single time you check in. But our guests, 90% of them or 95% of them like the white sheets. So that's what we're going to do. And we want to make sure that when a guest comes and stays in your home and then next year comes and stays in X, Y, and Z's home with us, they have the same experience. And that's how it works if you want to be a part of the program.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Rachel, what are your thoughts?
No, I mean 1,000%. Like I said, it's like it reminds me of the story, which I have many examples of this, where like a homeowner will say, "Oh, we'll tell the homeowner like, oh, you should have a king bed in the master," and they're like, or in the primary suite, and they'll say, "Well, we love our queen," and it's like that doesn't apply to the people that are spending over $1,000 a night to come stay at the house. And it's the same with the linens, and it's the same. And it's like for me with my homeowners, and because our homeowners are all in general, they're mostly all high net worth individuals. So my homeowners, maybe they don't care when I talk about sort of the scaling and stuff because it's really about them. And I'm not like my homeowners that I deal with, they're wonderful people, right? But just in the nature of their lives, like they are things are more custom. So for them, it's more about like, I compare it to when you go stay at a nice hotel, what do you expect to see? What makes you feel comfortable knowing that other people have stayed in that hotel? Or a lot of the homeowners that we work with, they have rented really nice homes themselves, right? And they have done vacation rentals in different places. And so I will say to them, when you go stay in these places where you're spending 5, 10 grand a night, what do you expect? Like if you expect to see beautiful white linens and towels and whatever, all the details are, like that's what we're trying to provide. So I do think that can help in a higher end situation. And it could probably help across the board. And yeah, I think, and then from the vacation rental property management company standpoint, Megan, what you said about empowering the team or supporting them with the right knowledge and the background story so that they can have those deeper conversations and not have to say like, oh, I'm not sure. Let me get someone that can answer that for you. But letting them have the conversation, knowing the why and the financial reasons and the data behind like why we're doing this linen program or why we encourage all these pillows, swapping out all the pillows or whatever it is. And, being able to share with them if they haven't been with Abode for, 15 years and they've only been here for like 5 years, let's say. It's like then sharing with them what the history is on the pillow situation, how we got from where we were to where we are today, and, what the cost is on these pillows and being able to speak in an informed way with the homeowners when they're talking to them. I think that's like so important because then you're not throwing them to the wolves. I think like that's what you said. Like you're not putting them out there just saying, "Hey, go tell someone about like my homeowner relations team." I'm not just saying like go talk to the homeowners and tell them we're going to do this pillow program where we're going to get everybody on these consistent pillows. It's like they need the background story. They need to have answers for when the homeowner says like, I really don't think that we need that. It's like, okay, well here, let me give you examples of when we haven't made the change and what things have gone wrong that could have maybe led to bad reviews or having to give refunds. And then being able to say like, and so here's the reasons why we finally made this decision. And also to acknowledge that like, to me, I like to have my team know, like, you can tell the homeowner, like, yeah, we've been really afraid to push this in the past because we're really afraid that you would get mad that we were asking you to spend money or that you wouldn't see that it was necessary. But like, here's how we decided to finally take this step and ask you this anyway. And, and I feel like that helps. Then people know you're not just, it's not so, because I think homeowners will tend to like think, oh, you're just doing this to make more money off of me. Like somehow you have a margin on this and you're just doing this for more profit, and it's like, we are a for-profit business. So like, legitimately, if we were trying to make a profit, like, are you mad? Like, because we're a business, it's not a nonprofit property management company. But like, with that said, this is like programs like a linen program or a pillow replacement program. These are not the profit center of our company, right? Like this is not supporting, multiple employees. It isn't like covering our costs of, our health insurance to our team. Like this is really about an amazing guest experience and homeowner experience and consistency in your property for the people that are going to come back and stay year after year. You believe that your home is amazing, and it is. And also you probably paid $5 million for it. So like legitimately, this is an amazing piece of real estate. But with that known, like, are you sure you're comfortable with your amazing, expensive piece of real estate representing you with these old pillows? Like this is incongruent. It doesn't make any sense. And so anyway, I think, like you said, like giving some of these detailed pieces of information to the team so that when they're having those conversations, they're not they're not having them in fear either. Like I don't want to put them into the situation I used to be in. So
Yeah. So you defined your linen program, you've priced it, you've got your homeowners on board, and I love that you've like trained your team on how to address some of their concerns or, with talking points and whatnot. How do you train your housekeepers, which there can be so much churn in the housekeeping, staffing model? How do you train them to uphold these standards and to make sure the right pillow sizes are on the right beds, etc.?
I mean, I can talk to the concept of the different sort of patterns on the sheets. Would that like relate to what you're saying,
Yeah,
Ashley?
yeah, sure, yeah.
So, one of the things that really that we learned from Robin and Heather Cragen with Moving Mountains is that they had created a linen program where they had like a sort of a shadow check. I would call it like a very tone on tone woven into the fabric little mini check on these white sheets on a certain size. I think it's on what is it on? Do you know, the queen? Is that what you said?
The king.
Okay,
Yep.
the king has the check, and then the shadow stripe is
Shadow stripe is the king with the check duvet.
oh, okay.
The solids on the queen, and then like a narrow stripe on the twins.
Okay. So
Yep.
see, I don't even know this because now I have this amazing team and they're handling it. But basically,
That's great. That means you're delegating, Rachel.
right? But so it's like, you can create a program where you select sheeting that there's these very subtle tone on tone. It's not like a printed color or anything. It's just like how the threads are woven in the fabric. It gives you sort of like a jacquard, I would say, like a very little bit of a pattern there. And then that pattern can be trained to the team with like photographs. So you can give the team like in an email. We use Breezeway. You can do it through Breezeway, and also obviously printed little books to show them like, hey, the king has a checked duvet and it has like a wide shadow stripe on all of the sheeting. And then, the twin has like these thin shadow stripe, and then the queen has solid, right? And so then once they're trained on that, then it's much easier to help for them to when they're, utilizing all of your linens that you have in your inventory to be putting them in the right on the right beds and stuff. And then I don't know, like what else with the housekeeping with the linen I mean, to me, that was one of our biggest things with our linen program. What else am I missing, Megan?
So for us, it kind of started with the same initial meeting of, hey, housekeepers, like this is what we're doing and here's why we're doing it, right? Like providing that context, because I think buy-in is always the first step, because this is like something that they have to deal with day in and day out. Like, hey, you as the owner of the company, you're not out there changing those beds. And so they want to know, like, well, why did you make this decision and how is it going to impact us? And then making the operational decisions to try to make it as easy as possible, right? So having the different ways to tell the difference between a king, a queen, a twin. You can also do the hem stitching, the colored hem stitching, which Ashley, I'm sure you were going to chat about. And then different colored linen bags I often see for different sizes that are labeled with specific like property detail information, and then pick sheets which have the exact like, hey, in this linen bag, this is exactly what you have. And we put together a training manual, had it in both English and in Spanish with pictures, Rachel, as you just mentioned. And for some housekeepers, like we would go for the first couple of turns and say, like, okay, this is exactly how it should look. So the biggest thing, like, one thing that was deeply important to us with all contracted housekeepers is that crew A wasn't making the bed one way and then crew B making the bed a different way. And so let's say like two families come and check in and their beds look completely different, right? And like I say this all the time, but I think that's like what creates kind of a frustrating, inconsistent experience where they're like, well, I don't even know who I'm staying with. And that is more associated with like an Airbnb than with, oh, I'm staying with Abode because the beds look this way. And so providing those photos of like, okay, a finished bed looks just like this. And this is what a queen bed looks like. This is what a king bed looks like made up. These are how the pillows should be arranged. And the same thing with towels in the bathroom and the kitchen towels as well. And we even went down to like amenity placement. So like this is how shampoos, conditioners, body wash should be placed. This is exactly how like the kitchen amenity pack should be placed, where you should put it. And the inspectors were trained after every single housekeeping crew would leave to go in and do two types of inspections. So they do a housekeeping inspection. So they'd go and, of course, check like, is there any sand on the floor and how are the beds looking? Kind of just reinforcing. And it was just another pair of eyes. And then they'd also do a maintenance inspection. So they'd turn on every single light switch and make sure that there weren't any light bulbs out. They would test every TV and make sure that the remote had batteries and all. So we had like an inspector manual and a checklist that they had to get through, as well as a housekeeping manual and checklist. And it is like pretty operationally heavy. And of course, like having an inspector go in behind a housekeeper, like that is costly and someone that you're paying on an hourly basis. But you actually do end up, if not breaking even, perhaps saving money because it saves on guest complaints on the back end majorly. Like when a guest checks in and they don't have batteries, like they're not going out to buy batteries. They're calling you. And
Thank
you're getting the batteries at 10 o'clock at night there, right? And same thing if the fridge isn't working or if there is a light bulb out somewhere. And so
for
if
the
you
Wi-Fi.
exactly, or the
Checking the
Wi-Fi, like,
Wi-Fi.
yes, you'd go in and you check the Wi-Fi, you'd look in every single drawer, which was
Mhm.
really a safety thing because people would leave their handguns behind, right? And so having which is insane, but happens all the time and certainly happened to us. So anyways, those were kind of like the checklists that we had in place and then, just kind of reinforcing that with additional training, and we would do like a pre-summer training always to ensure that
Okay.
everyone was on the same page.
So definitely the regular audits are important. And then that's how you would kind of communicate back issues to the housekeeping team through these these reoccurring trainings.
Yeah, so we actually used Salesforce, and in Salesforce, you'd submit work orders and basically say like, "Hey, I went back through this house, and here are the issues that we have." And we were like very data heavy, so we would pull and say like, "Okay, these were our top issues this month," and meet with the housekeeping teams and say like, "Hey, the biggest thing that's coming up is that we're putting." The amenities on the left side of the sink instead of the right side of the sink. Or we have noticed that, I mean, like very, very detailed. So along with the recurring tradings, studying the data and seeing like where are things being missed, what are guests complaining about, and then reinforcing that in those conversations with housekeeping crews and the teams that oversee them.
That's awesome. And so one of the other challenges or concerns when we talk to property managers is just how do I store all of this? How did you guys handle storage, inventory, all of that?
A lot of warehouse space. Rachel, what about you?
Yeah, yeah.
I know that's not what people want to hear.
Well, we don't have warehouse space. I mean, we have rented storage units still, which I know is probably insane. But Park City is where we have the most houses that we manage and where we have our in-house linen program. And we do use, I think we have 4 storage units that are like all concurrent together. And that's what we use. And this because our markets are in these very high dollar real estate ski communities, we haven't been able to like secure warehouse space that's in a good accessible area close to our office and close to all the homes that we manage. So we have always done it with these warehouse spaces. But then what we do is we put in all the shelving units and we create like a whole organizational process. And we do ours with our linens. We put them in rolls. So like they're our because in Park City there it's an in-house linen processing and our own in-house laundry. All the sheeting is like made into sheet the fitted sheet, the top sheet, the pillowcases, and then it's rolled up, and then they put like a special kind of tape on there, and it says which size of bed it is, and so that's how they're all stocked then.
So then does the housekeeper come in and then make the bags, or do they make the bags at
We're
your laundry?
actually we're working on this right now, but for all these years, what we have done is that the housekeepers go in and collect the linens that they need for the day and put them in bags and then go out and bring them to the houses. And we might be shifting that a little bit, but that's how we've done it so far.
Great.
We had
Yeah.
like a warehouse team. So there were people that were like specifically planted at the warehouse to do all the packing and picking. And then the housekeepers would come and pick up their bags and stack them in the cars.
Yeah, that's I know inventory management is a big undertaking.
No, I know. Should I say this out loud? I don't even know if I should say this out loud because then you're going to get so many people calling. But I know from my team, Julie, who handles our property enhancement and our everything really with Inhaven, she was just telling me today, like, hey, I asked Ashley if she could come out to Park City and help us as we implement this new inventory program for our linens and towels with this QR code program that we're going to talk about in a second here. And she was like, is it okay if I ask Ashley if she can come help for like a couple days? And I was like, sure, if she said she'll do it. So, I mean, obviously,
Cinco de Mayo
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
Park City.
right.
we lean heavily on Inhaven over here. Like, I am not joking.
No, we're excited. So we've got this new QR code system, inventory management tool, and it's going to help you with, I think, in your linen facility, as long as and in the greater property management space with a lot of our property managers, where housekeepers can go and collect. They can scan QR codes, collect what they're taking for the day, and then they can scan the items back in as they bring things back to the laundry facility. So you kind of know what's going in and out, and you can manage your loss and just your whole linen supply chain.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Exciting.
Yes.
And so another question we get is insurance, right? Like, how do you insure linen programs? Do you insure linen programs? What's the best practice here? Because I know there's some people out there, like we have a great partnership with Safely. And speaking with Safely, linens are the number one claim that they get from a guest damage perspective, which is insane. Well, I understand. And so, we work with them to provide better linens to their customers. What other tactics have you used to really ensure your linen program?
I
I
always
don't
hope
think
it
we
was covered
have.
under the umbrella policy.
Yeah, I don't think we ever. I mean, maybe I should be talking to Safely because we have never made claims for our linen. We always just considered it like, loss. But that sounds like a very good idea. So maybe I'll be working on that very soon. I don't know, Megan, have you ever seen like anywhere that you were? Was there any of that?
No, we had never covered them, but I remember, linen inventory was really difficult for us. And like even having what I would consider to be like a pretty organized warehouse and an outpost, we had something similar to you, Rachel, where we maintained multiple storage units. Like even knowing where our linen was doesn't mean you know how much of it you have. But at 360, when we were going through the process of selling to natural retreats, we had to understand, of course, like what our assets looked like. And so we went through like a huge linen inventory. And I remember being like, oh my God, like linen, you can have on hand like hundreds of thousands of dollars at linen at any given time, and is like an asset that if you decide to sell your business, like is something that is being purchased as part of your contracts. And so I think having a system in place that ensures that is like a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
And damages is a big deal, right, with linens. And I think it's just, working with your partners to understand, like, how do you launder these? I mean, Wendy at Lolo's in Park City is amazing. She's like the expert of laundering, but a lot of people ask us, like, how should I be caring for my, sheets? And we know that microfiber sheets do not like heat. So if you want to maintain microfiber, you have to be very low heat. They recommend hang drying almost those sheets to dry. And so I think just making sure that you have the right strategies for stain removal and washing so you can prolong that lifetime of the linens is important.
Funny, Ashley, you know this, but so I'm in New York City for anyone that is interested in knowing this information for the next 5 weeks. And I checked into my Airbnb, and this is like a perfect case for why Inhaven is important. Rachel, I checked in I'm on the 4th floor of a walk-up, which I didn't know until I had already booked it and paid, and it was far too late, right? I'm like 5.5 months pregnant. So I'm moving slow these days. And I get in, Ashley's husband comes and helps me carry all my bags up the stairs, up the 4 flights. I thought both of us were gonna die. And we finally get in, we unlock all the locks on the door. And the first thing I do is I go in the bedroom and I'm like sussing out the sheets, and it is heinous. And the sheets are gray and have stains on them. And I take the pillows out of the pillowcases. The pillows have yellow stains on them. And I mean, absolutely foul. The pillows cases are microfiber, but the sheets are not microfiber.
Perfect.
And the duvet is inside of this cover that has ties on it, so you can directly, like, touch the duvet. And I'm actually now sleeping on a full linen program. Thank you to Ashley, who also then drove it to me and helped me carry it up 4 flights of stairs, and then took my disgusting linens back. Um, but it was, like, such an interesting, I don't know, like, I never really get, because I typically stay in hotels, like I mentioned earlier, this experience on the guest side of things in an Airbnb. And the Airbnb, I'm calling it that because it's just a host who is renting it to me, and it had phenomenal reviews. And Ashley and I are always talking about this, like, quid pro quo with reviews, and how you can trust reviews like nil now. And I don't know, it was, like, so interesting to view things on the guest side of things. I literally, my first night, I was like, this is not the hotel experience that I'm used to. But like, guests do not, if I was anyone else who wasn't in the industry, I would not associate this with a host or a management company, because I wouldn't know the difference, right? I would just say, like, "Hey, I stayed in this Airbnb and the experience was, like, kind of gross with the bedding and the towels." And I think that, like, that is the risk to our industry that we are fighting so hard against. And being part of a company that is committed to a clean linen program and to standardize terry and kitchen items is, like, what can fight against this narrative that is being created when you check into a vacation rental and this is the experience that you have.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, look, that's why this standardization discussion, especially when it comes to the bedroom, the bathrooms, the kitchen, like, that's why it's so important, because of stuff like that. And I mean, I do understand that, like, all the different details matter and it's not just this stuff, but there is no denying the letdown you feel when you go into a vacation rental property and the bedding is that if it makes you uncomfortable before you even touch it, right? Like, just by looking at it, like, that's just such, a bad experience for the guest in every sort of way, and, that is something that can be avoided, right? Like, that can be solved, but I do understand that sometimes it feels difficult, like, yes, it's possible to solve it, but how? I don't want my homeowners to fire me, or I don't want, something really expensive that will bring down my ability to make money as a company or whatever. But that's the point here is like, okay, like this, we're not all out here reinventing the wheel on our own, like out on these, different planets where we can't talk to each other. Like, no, there's years have passed in the industry. People have come in, like in Haven, have created systems, processes, software. And it's like, okay, this was a hard thing, but anymore it doesn't have to be. And
Mhm.
Right.
that's the whole point. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's move on to from linen programs to laundry facilities, because I think that, one of the big questions that people have when they speak to us, or what they're contemplating, is, do I keep my laundry in-house, or do I set up my own laundry facility? Do I keep it in the property, or do I outsource it? Megan, do you want to talk about some of the pros and cons of in-house versus outsourcing?
Yeah, I think a lot of it ultimately comes down to cost, which both management companies that I've worked for, we used laundry facilities and didn't have our own. At 360 Blue, we had commercial machines that we primarily used for owner items and some Terry, and then everything else we outsourced to a vendor locally. And it was like, it's Rachel, you talked about this in the first episode, and I thought it was so interesting. Like, things to think about when you start a commercial space are very, very different. Like, you need to understand real estate and how much water you're gonna use and electricity and machine like, so we kind of, like, went down this path where we were pricing it out, and, the space didn't make sense for us, but I'm really curious to see, like, Rachel, cost breakdown wise, like, if you've ultimately saved money from doing it.
Yeah, I mean, so when we've looked at this, like, we're probably more on the side of, like, breaking even or, saving a little bit of money, and for us, so we created, a linen laundering facility in Park City. In Jackson Hole, we use High Country Linens, which is essentially like a linen laundering, business, but it's really like a linen rental business sort of, and that's like a whole other thing to describe. And then in, Sun Valley, we launder through like a commercial laundering facility. But in Park City, there was only one laundering facility that was commercial in the area, and all of the hotels that didn't have their own internal laundry and all the vacation rental companies that were utilizing an outsourced linen laundering facility were using this one company, and it had been around for a while. The machines were older, and so our sheets were coming back from them with, like, little rust stains and little tears. They weren't paying their team, and, like, there was we were hearing from their team, they were, not paying their team very much. There was a lot of turnover, and we had a lot of loss on our linen. So they had in the contract that it was up to 25% loss is like what was allowed in the contract, which is mind blowing. But and we would lose like annually about 20% in the laundering process. And so for those reasons, we were always really annoyed because we were spending a lot to have everything washed. And so at some point, the only laundromat in Park City, the only, like, coin-op big laundromat that had big commercial Speed Queen machines, became available for sale, and not the real estate, right? It was just the business itself. We have to pay rent, and so we did buy that, and, for us, that became a good, investment because the laundromat was able to function during the day as a coin-op laundromat, the only one in town, so it does have some revenue, and then we use it at night for the linens. And so I think one of the ways to get into having your own linen laundering facility would be allow yourself to be a little creative. Because like Megan said, it depends on where you are. But if you're in a place that has water issues, which of course could be the Mountain West, but could be like California, it could be a bunch of different places. Um, then you can have really high impact fees if you're looking at like purchasing a location or renting a space like a warehouse or whatever, building something and converting it into a laundry facility. Then what you're looking at is sure, it's the build out, you have to do a lot with like the pipes and the HVAC and all this kind of stuff to get the ability to put those machines into the space. But a lot of times you have impact fees you have to pay to the city or the community, which can be very high. And it's generally like per machine, right? So when you're putting in big machines, and it can depend on how big the machines are, you can have these huge impact fees. So it's like your startup can be your rent or your purchase price of the location and your machines, which is a lot. Like we just retooled the laundry facility in Park City and it was $500,000 to get all those machines. That's so much money, right? And if we would have had to pay impact fees on top of that, which could have been some more hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, but not everywhere has impact fees. But these are things that you have to think about in how you determine like, will this be a good choice? And for us, it's like what we do is we have different LLCs. So our Abode LLC, Abode Luxury Rentals in Park City, it pays an amount to our laundry facility, and that's how we kind of keep that profitable. But it can be complicated and confusing, and it also can be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because go ahead, Megan.
There's a set, like, when you're outsourcing laundry, I think it's a little bit easier to understand what costs are looking like because you essentially receive, like, a spreadsheet of, "This is exactly what your costs will look like, and here are the delivery times, here are the pickup times, or if you're dropping off the laundry, this is what this looks like." So it's a little bit more predictable when, like, running the initial analysis, but there's also then, like, they're laundering, for companies all over the place, and you aren't the number one priority, and so it's hard to and requires a lot of thought to kind of weigh out those pros and cons, and I always, like, running businesses, like to control as much of the experience as possible, which I know is really important when maintaining your own commercial laundry facility. It's just I agree, Rachel, like, whenever you're anticipating a new business expense, it usually ends up being twice as much as you think it's going to be, so just kind of going into it with that expectation, I think is important.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's really variable. So it's like you have to really do the research like based on your specific location or locations, because it's not easy to make assumptions across like the whole country or whatever in terms of how these costs can work out and how it can be profitable or be the best thing or not the best thing and not profitable to have your own laundering facility. I do think it's worth looking into, and, like, for us, we lucked out because there was this business that came for sale for a decent price. So it's like you never know what you're gonna come across, so it is worth it, I think, to do some research and look into it. You might find that there could be a good opportunity in the future, but there's not right now or vice versa, so
Yeah, and I think, we talk to a lot of people that are renting linens and, while in the short term that's, can be very convenient and you don't have the huge upfront costs, in the long term it becomes very costly. And so really trying to understand, what the long-term impacts of those decisions is important.
You have no way to like recoup those costs because they're fixed versus like, hey, we're going to do one buy-in and then end up recouping the costs through housekeeping fees. So I think it can be ultimately damaging.
yeah.
Right. And so to your point, Megan, earlier on just, you know, if you are outside sourcing your linens and you're finding that you are losing a lot, or you think you're assuming that maybe your linens are ending up going to some other customer of theirs, one of the ways that you can combat this, I know we talked about this earlier in an earlier episode, was just the custom labeling, or getting creative to make sure that your labels are on those linens, which can be done for free. Um, so, there's little things that you can do to really protect your linens against ending up in another laundry bag that's not part of your business.
I am a huge fan of custom labels. I think that they are like considerably more high end. I was just at the Four Seasons spa actually a couple of weeks ago, and the Terry that I was using all said Four Seasons on it, and it's just like the experience is significantly more upscale that way. And when the cost is just insignificant, compare it like to what you think it is, which I thought it was going to be like an insane investment to add custom labels. I think it goes a really long way in just kind of creating that experience. And even if it's, a quarter of your guests that notice it, I think it's still worth it.
No, I mean, look, it's when we had our linens processed somewhere else, we would find that we were getting back other company linens a decent amount of the time, and we knew that they were getting some of ours. And if we had had labels like that, oh my lordy, with that, I mean, because those labels are gorgeous, but they're noticeable. They're like that would be amazing. And Abode is implementing. We really want to do the label program, and there's a million reasons for that. But I think if you're doing it because you're having your linens laundered through a commercial facility, like, that's a great reason to do that, and if you're doing it because, like, for us, like, we are doing our linens internal, but I still think that, like, this is good branding, this is, like, a good little, showing of, um, that we do have a linen program, that we do have consistency, that we're on top of things. I think that this is, like, great for us just even within each rental or within the home for the homeowners. I think it's like just another example of like things we wish we had back in the old days that I'm so grateful we can do now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any other closing thoughts on linen or laundry?
I mean, I think this stuff is so complicated and there's so many sides to it. I mean, it's a great exemplification, or is that a word? I made that word up. It's like I watched too much Wicked and I just made an extended word.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
It's like a good way, like, I think our industry, the vacation rental industry, is so complex and it has so many facets. And I know like everyone thinks whatever their job is like really hard. But I do think this industry is just really freaking interesting because it's like we have these two different sides of clients, the homeowner and the guest, like competing, and they're so different. And we have all these variables depending on what area of the country or the world that you're in. And we have all these factors to consider. There's like, there's all of this like operational stuff to consider, and then all of this marketing piece and this, there's just so much. And I feel like talking about a linen program is kind of like a little microcosm of that, because it's like, oh, it's linens, but it's not just linens. It's understanding the economics of that so that you can explain it to a homeowner, and it's selling it to the homeowner. And then it's also like making it special for the guest experience. And it's the laundering process, and like that is complex. And then the whole like, can you do this without losing money? Can you possibly make money? And how does it relate to your housekeeping? And it's really complex, right? But again, like, and I know I keep saying the same crap, but it's like, this is a thing that felt like one of those many sort of like unsolvable, just do the best you can and keep moving forward. parts of the industry, and it is so positive feeling, and it's like gives me so much hope that when we have a business like In Haven that comes to the table that is solving a problem like this, and not just for like one company or whatever, but like for that there's like solutions here that can be used by any company. And like this is what I'm experiencing with my business. And it's just like so I don't know, empowering and positive. And that's why I wanted to do all these episodes on this podcast with you guys. And that's why I am so excited about it, is because, I spent so many years beating my head against the wall in so many different ways. But like when it comes to linens and laundry, and then to know that like, oh my gosh, we have a way to like optimize our linen program. We have a way to like inventory. We've never had a way to like properly inventory our linen, to understand profitability, to make it actually work. And we don't have to invent that wheel ourselves. Like someone can hand us these tools. It's like so, so lucky. So for me, like anyone listening who is, if you already have a linen program, but you still feel like, if you're like me and you're like, I have one, but I do wish it could be more profitable, or I do wish I had a better handle on my inventory. Like you don't have to go figure this out on your own. Like In Haven figured it out, and they can help you. And or you can email Megan and Ashley and like just whatever, pick their brains. But I think it's really exciting to know that some of this stuff has been figured out in terms of process, in terms of like really repeatable, standardized ways that can be applied across different levels, like, different tiers of properties, different areas of the country. I'm so grateful for it. So thanks for everything that you guys have done on this, because it has been a huge part of my life for so long, and something that did always just feel, impossible sort of to make better. And it's just so great that it's finally, we're getting there. So thank you.
Oh, we love your partnership.
Yeah.
And so switching, I guess we've done linens, we've done the bath, we've done linen program. Next week, do you want to get a little teaser to what we're going to talk about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Rachel.
The kitchens. So we are now going to talk about kitchens. And, obviously anyone who's listening, we go very in depth. And I feel like there's, again, as always, there's so much to cover. But I feel like the kitchen is like a little more exciting. Like I feel like the linens, the towels, like linen programs, laundry, like this stuff is so dense with like really valuable information, but it can feel sometimes like a little more, I don't know, like tedious and boring. But I feel like the kitchen will be like a more exciting conversation. Like maybe not exciting in terms of like so many notes that you could take and dense information you can come away with, but just like maybe a little more fun. I don't know. Do you guys feel like that?
Sexier next week with the
Yeah,
kitchen.
a little sexier. That's right.
I just cannot wait, and don't say anything. I cannot wait for you to tell everyone what you do. I mean, I know you mentioned it in previous episodes, but what you leave for the guest.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. I like talking about that. I think we could tease it. Like, how could we tease what that is? We could tease that by like saying it has to do with a certain type of dancer, and also it has to do with cows.
And that's it. Stay tuned.
If you want to know, come back next time. Okay, so I think we finally finished this immense topic. So listen, for everyone who's listening, and I know, like I always say, there's millions and millions of you. Thanks for listening again. We hope you got lots of good information, and that you have been considering, if you listen to the last episode, getting a tattoo of a Venn diagram. And we hope that you come back for the next episode. And otherwise, thanks for listening to the Hospitality Breakroom, where we have certainty served up weekly with In Haven. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.